hello. Welcome to this Piney News Update. It's February 16, 2016, and we've had some pretty bad weather today. Very strong low-level jet system moved across the area and brought a lot of wind damage, winds gusting up to 50 miles an hour across the island, and the snow melt and heavy rain. A lot of trees came down, and there were a lot of problems on the Long Island Railroad today. Earlier today, there were problems on the main line, major problems. The Ronkonkoma branch had signal problems with crossing gates because of power problems in the afternoon. And the Huntington branch actually was shut down between Huntington and Hicksville this afternoon due to a power outage affecting 3rd Rail and signals east of Hicksville. So there were a lot of problems on the Long Island Railroad tonight. However, I want to say that the Long Island Railroad really, they handled it much better tonight. All the cancellations were on the Babylon branch. All the flyers were canceled, and they really didn't touch anything on the main line. So I think they handled it better with the way they at least handled the cancellations. There were significant issues with equipment getting to places because of the suspensions and stuff due to the wind damage and power outages across the area. However, I do think once again that the railroad actually did a good job tonight, much to the chagrin of the people on the Babylon branch. They are whining again on Facebook. It's funny, they did cancel quite a few Port Washington trains tonight, and I never hear anyone on the Port Washington branch complain, but always Babylon branch. Oh, the issues on the Babylon branch are being swept under the rug. Is this a joke? What about all the other branches affected by the imaginary excuse? Babylon trains canceled and combined. So they whine. This is their problem. Everybody has problems every day. These people on the Babylon branch act like they're the only ones, and they still get treated. They still have the best service. That's why the railroad did the right thing tonight by canceling mostly Babylon line trains and not touching the main line, where the trains are less frequent and more crowded on average. However, that's not to say that there weren't problems on the Babylon branch. In fact, I have to say I did see one pretty crowded train around 6:30 pull into Belmore, and it was packed. I mean, literally packed, very crowded. This is exactly what your typical, well, it's a little worse than your typical mainline train, but generally lots of people standing in the aisles. It was pretty crowded. And if that train was an all local stops train, I don't want to think of how crowded it was earlier in the day. However, I did see other trains behind it that weren't as crowded, and we're going to take a look right now at some clips from today. The first will be the train that pulled into Belmore. So as you can see, that train was pretty crowded. And we got to Baldwin, and I saw another train pass through Express. And then they announced that there was a train. There was confusion because the train to Seaford, which was a combined train. It was combined with a Freeport train, was going to come on the other track, the north track, and then the sign said it was going to come on the north track, but it came on the usual track. So more confusing. However, I did say you had a rough time on the Babylon branch. And you know something? I never want to see trains canceled. Let me make that clear. I don't enjoy seeing trains canceled anywhere, all right? I think the railroad cancels trains too often. I think it's a big problem, especially considering how expensive the Long Island Railroad is. There shouldn't be so many cancellations. Whenever there's a hint of a problem, they just want to start canceling service. Just run the service late. So if the equipment for the train got there late, let's say it got there 30 minutes late, still run the service. You can't, they cancel so many trains, they're making Nice look good right now. I think there are more runs missing on the Long Island Railroad than there are on Nice. That's how bad things have gotten. I mean, actually, NICE has been pretty reliable the past week or two. I mean, I haven't had too many breakdowns. I mean, actually, I haven't had any breakdowns. I haven't seen any breakdowns. And most of my buses have come. Maybe sometimes they're late, but most of them show up. All right, but more trains are missing than on NICE, which is pretty bad. It's pretty bad how bad the railroad has sunk. You know, they got a hardening infrastructure on the railroad, so these things don't happen so much. I mean, the power lines, you're on the Babylon Ranch, you see the power lines up there next. Those power lines feed third rail signal power. A lot of places on the railroad have above ground power lines for that stuff. However, everywhere on the railroad, the big fat cables that you see, the lower to the ground, those are all signal cables and they're all above ground. Why do they have so many signal problems? Maybe that has something to do with it. Shouldn't they be underground, protected from the weather and these temperature extremes? Maybe then we wouldn't be having so many problems. The railroad's infrastructure needs to be hardened, and this is affecting the whole entire railroad. Something needs to be in our power system, our consumer power system. PSEGLI Long Island has hardened their infrastructure, and despite the wind, we had a lot of power outages today, like maybe 10 or 20,000, but it really wasn't too bad. I mean, it wasn't too bad. It could have been much, much worse. I mean, there were some power outages in Belmore, but it wasn't too bad. You know, the power outage in Belmore, our bus had to take a detour off Belmore Avenue because of that, and the police were just sitting there, and they weren't helping us get through at all. Luckily, I was able to help the bus driver get through. You know, no information from console at all either on that situation there. But right now we have 4,722 outages scattered about. Most of them are small, some of them are large, but we did have a pretty substantial wind event in our area. So considering everything, I think we actually did pretty well. And PSEG Long Island is out there restoring service as we speak. So I don't want to make this Piney News update too long. Just remember to stay tuned. I do have a video coming up, hopefully by the weekend, of some of the some of the changes in demographics along the Long Island Railroad. Some things you might, some of the things we expected, some of the things surprised me when I did some of this research. You're going to see how the different towns, are served by the Long Island Railroad, and yeah, the Babylon branch does pretty decently. And I want to explain, and basically want to talk about how basically the Babylon branch gets the best service, and therefore it makes sense when there is a problem for them to reduce. That's where the cancellations need to be. It doesn't mean that there should be cancellation, but if there has to be cancellation, they get the most service, they get the best service, they have the most trains on their branch more than any other branch on the entire railroad. I'm talking about the branch as a whole. So that is where the cancellations need to be. It wasn't pleasant, though. I will say those trains were pretty packed. Again, I don't believe in. I think they cancel trains. They decide to cancel trains way too easily. But anyway, I want to thank you for watching this Piney News. Be safe out there. Good news is, even though it was a pretty warm, yucky day, those warm winds, they ate the snow away, and the snow is all gone. So I'm happy about that. Anyway, take it easy. Have a good night and be safe.